Hey, hi, hello! Today we are going to be doing my June wrap up. So I do a balancing the books at the end of the month where I balance how many books I read and what categories I read them for on my bingo board, and balance that against how many books I bought this month to see if I made those equal with each other. These are the physical books that I read this month. I'm just gonna stack them right here for you all, and in case you aren't watching my weekly vlogs, I did move. I am in a new place now. There will be lots of videos about that coming out, have been coming out. You can learn all about it on my channel. And I'm sick, so we will definitely, there'll be some nose blowing, there'll be some coughing. I'll try to edit out all of them. I don't want to be gross, but if you're wondering why my voice sounds a little bit funny, that's the biz. This month, I read how many books? I usually have these stats written down by the time I come to talk to you, but I didn't this time because I'm a little bit going crazy with the move. I read 14 books this month, which is still kind of on my lower end of my average. I would say 15 to 16 is usually what I read every single month, so 14 is like just right around there, and is so much better than the 8 I read in May. So I'm super thrilled with it, not complaining, happy with it. I only have, I think it's 1 5-star from this month, which is really weird for me. Normally I give 5 stars pretty often for books that I either put on pause or DNF'd. So I wouldn't say this month was like a good reading month, but it was an interesting one. I read outside of my normal genre for a majority of the books that I read, which is really interesting. I finished up some series, and I finished up some books that have been on my TBR for a while now, and it felt really good. So the first book that I read this month was Black Girl Unlimited by Echo Brown, and I read this for the prompt blindfolded pick. I really don't totally know how to talk about this book, to be completely honest. So it was pitched to me as a magical realism autobiography, but it was definitely more autobiography than it was magical realism, and I felt like the book fell into this trap of like the magical realism fantasy part of it was really more of a metaphor than it was magical realism, and that's not what I thought I was getting into. So if I rated the book based on what I thought I was getting, it wasn't that good of a book. I didn't really enjoy it all that much. But if I rate it based on its merit and how well it was written and the impact that it had on me and the story that it told and how well I was educated on the subject matter, then it did its job, and it should be rated higher. So this is the story of a young black girl who is a black wizard, and she's growing up, I don't remember when or where, but in America in the 1900s, in the late 1900s, and she's dealing with racism and sexism and homophobia and lots of other just socialism. Is that even the right word that I want to use? People are judging her based on how poor she is, how smart she is, everything. And she is a very bright girl. The story is based on our author's true past, but our author isn't a wizard in real life. So the autobiography part was true, but there are these parts that like blend in the black experience in America with being a wizard, and that just didn't work really well for me. I ended up choosing not to rate this book, and I defend that decision because, one, I really didn't understand what this book was supposed to be going into it, and two, kind of the thing earlier that I talked about, like how much I enjoyed the book versus how much of an impact the book had on me, are two very different things. And three, it just kind of felt to me like I don't like judging autobiographies because I feel like I'm judging the person's life experience, not judging the story itself. So I just decided to leave that one unrated. Next up, I read The Miserable Mill, The Austere Academy, The Ersatz Elevator. Congratulate me, that's the first time I've said that word on my channel. The Vile Village, all by Lemony Snicket. They're all part of Series of Unfortunate Events. I read them for, let's even figure out which prompts I read them for. So I read them for the prompts over 1,000 reviews, no G in the title, character different than me, author different from me. And I am enjoying my reread of Series of Unfortunate Events, but I'm not absolutely in love with it. And I think this happened to me around this time last time I read these books, where it's like, okay, there's just like a lot of them. I get it. I get the point. They're all kind of broken up into the same respective storyline, but the stories are good. It's just there's too many of them, and I'm reading them all back to back to back to back, and I wish that I maybe had a little bit more of a break in between them, but I'm enjoying my reread of them. Up next, okay, finally I can hold something up for you. I finally read A Court of Silver Flames by Sarah J. Maas. I really enjoyed this. I have a whole entire video on my channel where I vlog the entire experience of reading this, and actually the first 3, which are over there. So if you want to know super details about any of this, you can go check out those videos. I'm not going to go in depth here. I did tab it and I kind of went through my tabs in that video. So if you're curious, go check that out. But I really enjoyed my experience with this. This is the story of Nesta, who is Feyre's sister. Feyre is the main character in the first 3 books. And Nesta's just basically trying to heal and live after dealing with everything that happened in the 3rd book. And she makes some friends, she makes some enemies, some stuff happens, there's a mask. It was a good book. I rated it 4 out of 5 stars. I don't really have much more to say because I did a whole video on it. Just go watch that. And I read A Court of Silver Flames for my pick for the month. Next, I read Recursion by Blake Crouch, and I read this. Did I read this for a video? No, I didn't. I completely read this not for a video. I think I picked it up randomly. Oh, I read Recursion for video prompt. What video am I reading Recursion for? Did I finish filming that video? Oh, haha! I know what video I filmed Recursion for. Cold Medicine. I'm a little bit out of it, not gonna lie. You'll be seeing that in the next 3 or 4 weeks. It will be coming out in July 100%. There's nothing stopping that video from coming out at this point, and I don't think I filmed the conclusion to me reading Recursion, so I'm gonna have to go back and recheck that. But I'm not gonna spoil a ton here because that video will be coming out very shortly, but I loved Recursion. I rated it 5 out of 5 stars. It's my only 5-star for the month. I thought it was so freaking good, and I don't totally know how to talk about it without spoiling some things for you. So if you don't want to know anything about this book, I'm about to get like minor spoilers into it, just kind of about the plot in general, and you can skip ahead. I try to put chapter tags at the bottom for when I talk about books if you don't want to know anything. So Recursion is the story of this man, and how do I even talk about this book? So there's this disease traveling through the world called false memory syndrome, and we start the book out with our main man, who is a detective, trying to keep a woman from jumping off the ledge because she has this syndrome and she remembers this whole entire other life that she had, where she had a loving husband and a loving child, and she woke up one day with complete memories from both of those timelines, and the current life that ended up being real ended up being the worst timeline, and she couldn't live with that idea. And so he's concerned that he might have caught this from her, because now he's kind of starting to remember some things falsely. You're not totally sure if they're actually memories, or because he's a maladaptive daydreamer, or if that's just how he kind of deals with things. While he's investigating, he kind of gets too close to some things and finds this man who is helping rich people undo mistakes that they've made in their past by sending them back in time and allowing them to correct decisions that they made. And that is what's causing the false memory syndrome. Now, we're also following this woman who is a scientist, and she is the one who discovers how to do all of this. And her timeline kind of catches up with our main man's timeline. And then there's lots of time trickery. And it was so good, like so good. I loved it. It kind of has an open ending too, and it was just enjoyable. I felt like I couldn't put the book down. Like, I wanted to be reading this book, and I feel like I haven't felt that way in a long time, and it inspired me to go pick up some other books outside of my comfort zone, which I'll be talking about in July's wrap up. But it was just fantastic. I'm so glad I read it. I will definitely be picking up other books by Blake Crouch in the future. I already have my eyes on Dark Matter. I loved it. If you leave this video with nothing else in mind, just know that even if you don't like sci-fi, this is a fantastic book and you should go pick it up. Like, it was so good. It's making it on my favorites of the year list. Like, So good. Next, I read A River of Royal Blood, and this is part of some of my friends. We're doing like a pass the book, so this isn't my copy. I don't own this, and I actually need to be passing it on to someone else. I read it. That's the most I can say about this book. I didn't enjoy my read of this, and I'm not totally sure why. No, I 100% know why. I feel like the author's writing was just kind of juvenile, and that the plot was predictable, and that I didn't like our main character. I like some of the side characters, but she just kind of bored me. I also definitely thought that the story was going to be something different than it actually was. Yeah, I read this for the Pumped Buddy read, and let me tell you what the back of the book says, and then let me tell you what the book is actually about. 16-year-old Eva is a princess, born with magic of blood and marrow, a dark and terrible magic that hasn't been seen for generations. Living in Reina's long and dark shadow, Eva must now face her older sister Isa on her 17th name day in a battle to the death if she hopes to ascend to the ivory throne. Because of the Queendom of Myra, only the strongest, most ruthless rulers survive. So I thought it was going to be like battle of the two sisters, throw them in an arena, kind of like a Three Dark Crowns setting where you have these two girls like fighting to the death most of the book. Maybe she's hiding from her sister. Maybe it's gonna be like Hunger Games-esque where they're in an arena and they're like thinking their way through things. But that was 0% of what this book was about. This book was about our main girl Eva getting taught by this like weird vampire dude how to use her magic. And if I had known that going into the book, I think I might have enjoyed it more. But I rated it a 2.5 star. I don't really have anything else to say. And I kind of want some surprises to be saved for other people who might watch my videos and will be reading this copy of the book, because I took notes in it and I actually drew pictures in it, which is really fun. Shit, this book's not supposed to be here. Well, I guess I'm talking about 15 books this month. So next I read The Last Mortal Bond by Brian Staveley, and I read this for the prompt book previously dropped because I've been putting this book on my TBR so many times. Basically since I started TBR Bingo, it's been on my TBR almost every single month. I went back recently and rewatched some of my old videos and I was like ashamed how often this book showed up on there. So I finally read it and I really enjoyed it. This is the third and final book in Brian Staveley's The Unhewn Throne series. There is Skullsworn, which is kind of like a novella that comes after this. And then July 6th, he is releasing the next book, which is like following after these ones, but it's in a different series. So it's in the same world, but it's kind of following the same characters. Like, don't go read that summary if you haven't read The Last Mortal Bond because it spoils the ending, but like, they're connected, but they're not, and it's fine, and it's cool, and whatever, we're moving on. So I really enjoyed this book. I didn't like it as much as the first two. Book 1 and 2, I rated 5 out of 5 stars, and book 3, I rated 4 out of 5 stars. I just felt like it was way too long. Like, I think the audiobook was 30 hours long, and it definitely didn't need to be that long. And one of my favorite things about this series was like the shock value of how horrific it was, because I'm not gonna lie, I enjoy reading horrible things happening to characters, and this book just didn't have as many horrific things happening to my characters, so I didn't like it as much. I definitely need to seek help now. I'll call someone about that after this video is done filming. So I really enjoyed it. I'm not gonna go into what the summary is about in this book because it'll be spoiling the other two books, but the first book is about the death of the emperor, and he has left his 3 children behind, and the whole entire kingdom is trying to figure out who should be ruling the throne now, who should be ruling the entire empire. Should it be the politician, the monk, or the soldier? And we're following each of those children as they learn more and more secrets about this world and about the gods who have left them on this world, and about their father's death, and about what just really is happening out there. And it was really good and really dark. There's also this amazing magic system where there's these creatures called leeches, and they're basically human, but they have some type of power tap, and so they can use that item if it's near them and draw on it to use magic in certain ways. And it was fantastically weaved this story, so realistic, because it's basically seen as an outlawed thing, but if you're willing to use it for the government, it's okay. Like, how realistic is that? We all know that's how magic would be used in the real world. So yeah, I loved it. I'm glad I read it. It was good. Not as good as some of the other ones. Oh my goodness, I had another 5-star in here. Okay, I miscalculated that a little bit. Did I not write about it? Nope. Okay, I had 2 5 stars this month and I just missed the second one of them. So I also read My Dark Vanessa this month, which in case you've missed me just babbling about it, I rated it 5 stars. I read this for the prompt new author to me, and I really enjoyed this book. I almost read it completely in one day. I read it within a 24-hour period, but it was over the course of 2 days. But oh my god, I don't even know if I can fully recommend this book, to be honest, because it gave me some really bad PTSD flashbacks. Like, I don't want to go into it, and I'm not making fun of PTSD or I'm not making light of it, but I have had some issues with PTSD in the past for certain traumatic events, and this book brought them back. Like, I've been fine for over 3 years now, and after reading this book, I've definitely had to seek loved ones and comfort and just being more tolerant of myself. But then again, the story was so important and so good, and I couldn't put it down, that I also highly recommend that you go read this book. When I'm about to describe the summary to you, I don't want you to think that I had to deal with anything that our main character had to deal with. It was more so that our main character was going through trauma, and her dealing with trauma was just very reminiscent of how I dealt with trauma at a certain period. So no, I did not go through any of the sexual assault that she had. Like, you don't need to worry about that. It's just more so trauma was so real that it brought up memories for myself. And I'm only saying this because I want you to be aware going into this story that it was very realistic and it was very hard to read, and that if you're worried about that at all, you should not be picking up this book. My Dark Vanessa is the story told in 2 timelines about this main girl. It's told from when she's in high school and she is preyed upon by her English teacher, and he sexually assaults her. He gets into a relationship with her and has sex with her, and she is struggling with this as an adult in the other timeline because she believes that she fully accepted his sexual advances and that she even asked for it and that she was okay with it, so it's not rape because she wanted it. And these other girls are coming forward and saying that they were sexually assaulted or raped by him, and she thinks that they're just asking for attention, that they were just asking for it with him too, and that she shouldn't come forward because she wanted it. That's what she wanted with her life. And it's a very hard story to read, but it was very important and very impactful, like I said, and I do recommend it if you're willing to try it or you're interested in it. I totally recommend checking out this book. It was hard-hitting, it was an enjoyable read, it was so well written, and I definitely, the pages were turning. So, I mean, I listened to it, but the minutes just ticked on by. Next up for the prompt book everywhere, I read The Chosen and the Beautiful. So I got an arc of this book from NetGalley and the publisher, and I listened to it. They gave me the audiobook. I didn't love it. I didn't hate it, but I didn't love it. I ended up rating it 3 stars. I'll start there. This is a Great Gatsby 1920s magical realism retelling. I enjoy the book The Great Gatsby. I've read it multiple times. I've had to read it for school multiple times, so I've had to really analyze the story. And I think that this book did a good job with the retelling parts of that. The story is told from Jordan Baker's perspective, and she really opens up this other side of the story that was really good and really enjoyable to hear from. But I felt like the main part of the story was still focused on Gatsby and Daisy, and I really wanted it to not be focused on them so much. I don't care about these dumb white people. Jordan Baker was American Vietnamese immigrant, and she was taken when she was a small child and brought to America, and there's kind of this dealing with that she has to go through, and I wanted to know more about her and her story and why she was here and why she was doing what she was doing in her life. And it still felt like a lot of the story revolved around those dumb white people, you know what I mean? The magical realism part was very forgetful. It didn't happen enough, and it didn't have really any impact on the story for me to be yeah, that was a cool way to tell The Great Gatsby. It was more so why did she have these elements? They really didn't impact the story at all. Like, you flat out could have cut out all of the magical realism and it would still be the same exact story. They were cool. I thought that it was a really cool touch, but it happened so little that every single time it would happen, I'd be like, oh yeah, that's right, there's magic in this world. I completely forgot about it. So I was just kind of left like underwhelmed, I guess is the right word. I hate to say that. I just was so excited about this book. I had such high expectations about it, but I rated it 3 out of 5 stars because it wasn't bad. There were some really good moments to it. I really, really loved the first 25% of it and thought I was going to rate it 5 stars, but I didn't. From Blood and Ash, and while I pull this one up, I'm going to talk about Kingdom of Flesh and Fire. So I read Kingdom of Flesh and Fire for July, but I'm going to talk about it now because I want to talk about them kind of in tandem with each other. So we'll start with this one. I read From Blood and Ash for buddy read, and I read Kingdom of Flesh and Fire also for buddy read in July. You'll see that if you've watched my TBR Bingo for July. So From Blood and Ash is the story of Poppy, who is the maiden, and because she is the maiden, she is not supposed to partake in any worldly pleasures, and she has to get a new guard very early into the story, and her new guard is named Hawk, and they kind of develop attraction for each other, and then he slowly shows her that her world is not exactly how she thought it was. There's also this being on the outskirts called the Dark One, who is like trying to upset her entire world and is causing chaos, and there are these people called the Ascended who need Poppy to ascend so that she can like help them out, and it's very complicated new adult fantasy romance. The world building was so odd, like so unique, but it also like wasn't given to you or explained to you. You really had to hang into 500 plus pages of this book to be able to understand anything, and even then a lot of the story isn't explained, or the world isn't explained until this book, which is why I'm going to talk about them together. So this book wasn't bad. It's definitely hard to talk about and it's hard to explain, and I don't even know if I would ever recommend this book, to be honest, but it wasn't amazing either. At least I didn't love it. I absolutely love Poppy. I think she's an amazing character. I might be in love with her. I've drawn her so many times at this point. Like, she's fantastic. I love her so much. I want her to do well and to be happy, and she's just great, but I hate Hawk. I hate him viscerally with every part of my being. When he's on page, I catch myself doing that thing where you like mockingly read back their lines where you're like, he chuckled as he started towards the guarded archway. My logic is never faulty. And then in my head, I'll be like, my logic is never faulty. Like, I hate him so much. So much. In all seriousness, he was gross and disgusting and literally put hands on Poppy when she did not consent to it. And in my book, that is called rape. So I'm willing to argue that in this book, and in this book, he raped her. He did. And that's disgusting and gross. And even though Poppy was like, oh, I'm okay with it, like, I want it, she was never asked. She was never given the full clarification of what was happening in the moment. And she was never gave any consent to anything that was going on. So I'm not cool with that. Not in the least bit. There's this scene in here where they're on a journey and he like, I'm about to spoil a few things. I hope you guys don't mind. He like fingers her in the woods and she gets so uncomfortable because the guards are like near her and she's like convinced that they can hear her and like hear what's going on. And then, small spoiler, in this book she finds out that they can like hear super well and like smell super well, and so they all fully knew what was happening, but like no one told her that they knew what was happening. That made me incredibly uncomfortable. So incredibly uncomfortable. The writing is not bad though. I will say, like, Jennifer L. Armentrout writes easy books. They're quick to get through. They're quick to be able to understand. Like, I was pretty hooked through both of these stories, regardless of how much I liked or disliked either of them. Like, they were easy books to get through. I just had a lot of problems with This one more so than this one. So this one I enjoyed more. I rated it a 3.5 out of 5 star. I'm done talking about this one now. It was good. I would reread this. I enjoyed this book. I did. 3.5 is not a bad rating. This one, though, I did not enjoy. I did not like this book. What? I'm sorry. What? One more time for the people in the back. What? This book was a giant info dump. The entire story was just the same conversation repeated between 3 characters. It was Poppy being confused and asking questions. Kieran being like, oh my god, you ask so many questions. And then freaking Hawk being like, oh my god, you're so violent, princess. That was the entire book. That was the entire book. There was no plot to this book. There was no purpose for this book other than to build the world that she lacked building in the first book. This book sucked. I don't understand. Like, the sex scenes weren't even that great. Every single sex scene, minus I think one of them in this book, was just Hawk fingering Poppy. Okay, this video is not appropriate for children. I'm sorry, it's just not. But like every single time, and he would like make a point of it where he'd be like, I want to bring you pleasure, but you don't have to bring me pleasure. And I'm like, if you guys are trying to develop into a relationship, it's not just about Poppy. It's not. It's about the two of you coming together and being something. And no, it doesn't have to be that every single time, but like, he literally apologizes one time because he climaxes near her. And I'm like, what? Is she not allowed to bring you pleasure? Are you the only person who's allowed to bring her pleasure? I'm sorry. I'm so freaking angry about this book. I rated it 2 stars. There were scenes I enjoyed. I actually really liked Kieran in this book. I also really liked Alistair in this book. I thought they both did really good jobs. And once again, I loved Poppy. I loved Poppy in this book. She like would say things that I was just like, yes, queen. Like, yes, you are doing such a good job. What's the one here that I lined? So Hawk was basically like, oh, Poppy's mine. So watch out. Don't touch her. And then Poppy was like, by the way, I'm not yours. I don't belong to anyone but myself. Nothing changes that. Heck yeah. Loved that. Hawk also did this disgusting thing in this book where anyone who even looked at Poppy wrong, he would just kill them. That's not love. That's not protection. That's being a freaking psychopath. That's being possessive of your significant other. Hawk is not a good guy, and I'm gonna be reading the friggin' 3rd book. You can't see it. I'm gonna be reading this shortly, and if they end up together, I will throw this book across the room because I hate him so much, and I'm really hoping that Jennifer L. Armentrout is gonna pull a Sarah J. Maas and is gonna like let me have a different love interest because I can't stand him. I can't stand him, and I don't understand why people like him. I don't get it. I don't. Are we reading the same books? Are we reading the same books? So now that I've made every single person on this planet hate me, I will officially be retiring from BookTube in the coming future because that book sucked my ass. That's not what I wanted to say. I will now be retiring because this book sucked worse than eating an entire ass. That's also not what I wanted to say. I don't have a joke for the end of this book. I didn't like it. I'm keeping it. I like fantasy romance now, apparently. I don't know if I actually enjoyed hating the book or if I just hated the book. You know, like there's a fine line between the two of them, and I sit somewhere on that fence. That wasn't an expression. None of this is what I wanted to say at the end of this book. Something's wrong with me. I'm broken now. Next up, I read Realmbreaker by Victoria Aveyard. And guys, I once again have nothing really good to say about this book. I don't have anything necessarily bad to say about this book because I can't remember this book. I read this book, when was it? June 12th to June 14th, and today is June 28th, and I cannot physically remember this book. And the thing is, I read it during my 48-hour readathon, so you can watch a lot of my experience of reading this book in that video if you want to go check it out. While I was reading it, I couldn't remember the book. I would literally be reading, and I would read this page, and then I would go to read this page, and I'm like somewhere here on this page, and I would have already forgotten everything that happened on this page. If this book won a superlative at its high school reunion, the superlative would have been most forgotten. And there was nothing wrong with this book. I would have to read you the summary to tell you what happened in this book. So my normal thoughts on whether or not I should be able to rate a DNF are, if I have read enough of the book that I can have a constructive conversation about the entire book, about the book in its entirety, then I should be able to count the book as being read, or I should be able to rate the DNF, even if I haven't read every single physical page in the book. Now the problem with that thought process is I might have to change it, because I've read every single page in this book, and I cannot have a conversation about this book. Not at all. None so. Nada. Okay, let's try to piece together from my brain what this book is about, instead of me just complaining about it. So this is the story of a girl whose mom used to be a pirate, and her father used to be some kind of magical being, but she never knew her father. But like, these other magical beings needed her father's blood to unlock something. And so they got her, and they went on this quest with a sword to find the thing, and her uncle is doing a thing. It was a YA epic fantasy. This book would have been perfect for me. I love epic fantasies, and I would have loved to have read a YA version of an epic fantasy. This book definitely was unique and stood on its own and was a fantastic idea. But I'm still here saying I don't remember a single thing that happened in this book. So I rated it a 2.75 because I think I should have enjoyed it. Finally, the last book I read this month was Empire of Sand. And I did enjoy this book, but it was too slow for me. I picked up this book because it had been recommended to me. I kept seeing it everywhere. Oh, I didn't tell you what I read Realmbreaker for. What did I read Realmbreaker for? I read Realmbreaker for metallic cover. I read this book for red cover. I forgot to tell you what books I DNF'd this month. We'll talk about those at the end now. Oh my god, I'm so sick. I liked this book. This was how do you describe it? Desert fantasy about an arranged marriage between this half-blooded nobleman's daughter and this man who worked for this like god-esque person. It was a lot about culture and identifying with your culture, even if it's being erased by the other half of your culture, and about accepting yourself and about how minorities can be taken advantage of. And I really liked our main character. I thought she was great. I didn't totally care about our love interest or their romance, nor did I totally believe their romance. This is another like new adult fantasy romance that a lot of people don't talk enough about, but I think it's because it doesn't really have any like super smutty scenes in it, and it was just really slow. I knew going into the book that it was going to be slow, but I guess I just wasn't totally ready for how slow it was, to be honest. This book will be added to my shelf of books. Let me get it. So a while ago I read The Tiger's Daughter, and every single part of this book I recognized as being genius and being such a good book, but it was so slow that I was miserable the entire time reading it, because I don't enjoy when books are this slow. And this book is going to be added to that category of books that I'm not going to get rid of because I see how genius they are. I will recommend it to people who tell me that they don't mind slow books and are looking for something particular. But I myself, like, can't read books this slow, and so I just found myself, like, dreading picking it up because it was just so slow. How many times can I say that? It took me 15 days to read this book, and it is not that long. Like, a lot of this stuff at the end is, like, extra stuff. There's a chapter for the next book, and then there's a chapter for a book not even written by this author in the back here. That was a little confusing. Orbit, I don't know what that was about. I will not be getting rid of this book. I will be recommending this book to people, just not people like me. I don't think I'll pick up the next one, but I did get the Arc of the Jasmine Throne, which is written by the same author, and I will be picking that up, hopefully, very shortly. I'm excited to read it. Getting confused. I rated this book 2.75 out of 5 stars. So that's it, but let me talk to you briefly about the books that I DNF'd or put on pause in this period, and I'm not going to go into summaries about each of them. I'm just going to quickly go through why I DNF'd or put them on pause. I put The Never Tilting World by Rin Chupeco on pause because I read one chapter and then I just literally did not have the time to continue reading the book, but I really enjoyed it. So it's technically not on pause. I put it back onto my want to read shelf because I borrowed the library book and it just had to be returned before I could get to it, but it's something I'd like to return to. I really enjoyed it. I then DNF'd Dance with Thieves. Just too tropey for me. Too bad YA, if you know what I mean. Like, YA is great. I love reading the genre, but that was not a good one. I then also put on pause Master of Jin because I just wasn't in the mood for it. I am picking it back up in July. And then I DNF'd For the Wolf because it sucked and it was bad and I didn't like it. I talk about that in my 48-hour readathon vlog. I hate being that blunt about books, but I'm sick and I can't think. So I apologize, but I'm also not sorry. Let's talk about the bingos I got this month. So this is what my bingo board looked like at the end of the month. As you can see, I got 4 bingos, 2 down and 2 across. So that's really exciting. So that means I could have bought 4 books this month. Now I actually ended up only buying 2 books this month. So I have 2 bingos to roll over into the month of July and I will be needing that. That's fun. Ha 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 ha. So the 2 books I bought were Skullsworn and The Empire's Ruin by Brian Staveley, which I kind of briefly talked about already in this video. So I guess I'm not going to go into any more detail about them. Cool. So that's it. That's my June balancing of the books. I'm balanced. Actually, I have extra points for next month, which is exciting. I really had a weird month. I had a weird reading month. I did not enjoy a lot of books that I read this month. I felt crappy kind of the whole entire month, not gonna lie. Anyways, that's it for me. Let me know how your June month went with your reading. Let me know if you had any favorites from this month or any least favorites from this month. Did I have a least favorite? Yeah, it was Kingdom of Flesh and Fire, and I didn't even read it for this month, but it's still my least favorite for... Oh no, it won't be for the whole year because it wasn't as bad as Red Rising. Red Rising sucked. Don't go read that book. My name's Amanda, and I'm going insane slowly. Thanks for watching. I appreciate each and every one of you. Subscribe if you want to see more content that's just as chaotic as this. I keep blaming it on my cold, but let's be real. I am a disaster of a human being 24/7. And I don't remember how my outro goes, but until next time, I'll talk to you in the comments. I'm trying to give you the thumbs up, but it's bye.